My husband, Ryan Shepherd, was in a car accident. His body wasn't seriously hurt, but there was some slight bleeding in his brain. Before I saw him, the doctor had already warned me that cerebral bleeding could lead to symptoms like dizziness and memory loss. He told me to be mentally prepared. So when Ryan woke up, looked at me with cold, distant eyes and asked, "Who are you?" I simply smiled gently and said, "Ryan, I'm your wife, Emily Shen. You really don't remember anything?" I softly stroked his arm, even more tender than usual. We were in love for 6 years, married for 2, and in just over a month, our baby will be born. Aren't you excited to become a dad? Ryan glanced at my round belly, and for a second, guilt flashed through his eyes, but he quickly shook his head firmly. No way. Willa and I were childhood sweethearts. We've been together since our first year in high school. There's no way someone like you could have come between us. He turned to Willa Carter, reached his hands out to her and said, "It's always been us, hasn't it? Even in the car accident, we were in it together, taking the impact side by side. We've always shared happiness and hardship." Willa gave an awkward smile, but still held tightly onto Ryan's hands. The noon sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains, bathing the two of them in a soft glow. Dust particles floated in the golden light, making the scene look like a painting. Hazy, dreamlike, just like back in high school when they kissed passionately under the sunset. Back then, they were being romantic while I sat quietly nearby, reading my textbooks and doing practice problems. If a teacher showed up, I'd pretend to tutor them, covering for their relationship. I did that for 3 years. I knew full well I was just tagging along, but I accepted it willingly. Because I was poor, because my parents favored my brother and never valued me. Even though I had the top score in the entire city on the high school entrance exam, they still refused to let me go to school. Luckily, a prestigious private academy had a special program that recruited 10 outstanding students from impoverished families each year. They offered generous scholarships and promised cash awards ranging from tens to hundreds of thousands if we made it into college. That's how I got the chance to continue studying. Good grades should have been a student's greatest asset, but in that school, it meant nothing. That place was built on money and connections. Even the smartest poor student was, at best, destined to become a technician for their children in the future. You can imagine what it was like for me there. Facing all the mocking and discriminatory looks, I remember thinking, I shouldn't have come. I even had a moment where I wanted to run home and let my parents sell me to some rich old man just to be done with it. But I was lucky. Willa took me in. She allowed me to be her and Ryan's sidekick. She once said, "Other girls are too charming. If they hang around Ryan too much, what if they end up seducing him? But someone like you, poor and lowly, even if you're pretty, you're just a man's pet. No rich guy would ever truly love you." I can't even remember what I felt at the time. I only remember she gave me 10,000 yuan. That was my pay for being her maid for 3 years. To most people, 10,000 isn't worth bending over for. But to me, it meant everything. "Why are you still here?" Ryan's brows furrowed tightly, and he sounded annoyed. His voice snapped me out of my memories. I kept my cool and smiled. "All right, I'll head home now. Take good care of yourself." Then I turned to Willa and gave a slight nod with a smile. "Willa, I'll be counting on you these next few days. Thanks for taking care of him." Her eyes showed a trace of pity. "Emily, I'm sorry. It's Ryan and me. We wronged you, but I love him so much. I can't live without him. Please just leave him, okay?" I looked silently at Ryan. He stared at my belly again, hesitation flickering in his eyes. Willa buried her face into his neck, her voice trembling with tears. "Ryan, if I don't have you, I can't go on. You promised me after the crash. You said you'd divorce her and marry me." At her words, Ryan's hesitation vanished. He looked at me coldly and said, "Emily, I don't know what happened between us, but I'm sure of one thing. I could never love you. Let's get a divorce." I felt like laughing. "Willa Carter, do you truly love Ryan Shepherd? Ryan, do you truly not remember anything that happened between us?" The turning point in the fate of the 3 of us came right after the National College entrance exam. I got what I had long dreamed of. I was accepted into Peking University, and I also received the 500,000 yuan award that the school had promised. Even though most of it was snatched away by my parents and my brother, I finally had a little savings of my own. For the first time, I could breathe freely at university. Ryan's academic performance had only ever been average, but he took the international returnee route, one of those backdoor ways to bypass the competition, and ended up getting into a top university as well. Only Willa, despite using every method available to her, ended up with a shockingly low score of 200 on the college entrance exam. In the end, her only option was to study abroad in the UK. At first, Ryan and Willa barely managed to maintain a long-distance relationship. They video called daily, whispered sweet nothings to each other, and every holiday Ryan would fly straight to the UK. But over time, youthful hormones clashed with the strains of long-distance love. Their pride, his as a prince, hers as a princess, meant neither would compromise, and their relationship came to a dramatic and bitter end. Back then, Willa, trying to provoke Ryan, even sent him photos of herself in bed with several white men. She said something that Ryan never forgot. "Stop trying so hard. Your scrawny little body could never satisfy me. I'll never love you again." Ryan was so furious he wanted to fly to the UK and kill her. He was too proud to accept being cheated on like that. Not just once, but over and over. His parents couldn't stop him, but I did. I was the one who held him back with all my strength. To him and Willa, I was nothing more than a tag-along, a loyal little sidekick. But I saw them as friends, because no matter their reasons, they had helped me through my most desperate and impoverished years. I never expected that after all their chaos and destruction, Ryan would end up choosing me as his girlfriend. I asked him why. I remember exactly how dismissive he sounded when he answered, with a look of contempt in his eyes. "The person Willa despises most is you. To her, you'll always be the lowest, most worthless dog. But that's exactly why I want to love you. I want to lift you up. I want her to see that, in my eyes, you're worth more than she ever was. I want her to regret it for the rest of her life." Was I hurt by that? I probably should have been. But I agreed, because the more I saw of the world, the more I understood. Poverty is the hardest gap to overcome. I needed a springboard, a higher starting point, and Ryan was the closest and most accessible one. Now that he's back with Willa, I've once again become the discarded dog. But that's okay. I've already gained the thing I desired most, money and wealth. As for love, I never dared to hope for it. When I agreed to be Ryan's girlfriend in college, I had only one condition: a monthly allowance of 200,000 yuan. Some people called it selling my body, but I never saw it that way. We were a real couple. I wasn't a mistress, and he wasn't a sugar daddy. The allowance was just an added bonus to the relationship. The reason I asked for money was because it was my backup plan. My instincts told me that the moment Willa came back, I'd be kicked to the curb. I was lucky. Willa stayed obsessed with the handsome guys across the ocean, so I kept earning from the relationship while using the money to improve myself. With that money, I hired private tutors to fix my terrible spoken English. Without ever going abroad, I mastered a polished London accent admired by the upper class. With that money, I took one-on-one lessons in Spanish and French. I even talked Ryan into traveling across Europe with me during summer break. The country bumpkin I once was could now switch fluently between 3 foreign languages. With that money, I took etiquette classes from famous instructors to refine my fashion sense, grooming, and social manners. With that money, I could finally make friends freely, no longer afraid to join a dinner party just because I couldn't afford the meal. Most importantly, with that money, I bought a large condo in Beijing in the very first year I earned residency there. As for that residency permit, it was also part of my plan. Originally, my safest option was to take the civil service exam or go to grad school. But when I thought of my family, those bloodsuckers who leached off me, I gave up the idea of a stable government job. That path would have come with endless rules and moral expectations, and I'd be shackled by my birth family forever. But I still needed residency. So, I used my Peking University degree and Ryan's connections to land a job at a government-affiliated institution. I stayed just long enough to get my household registration, then quit, and paid the required compensation. It was shameless, yes, but I had no other choice. I wanted to get rich quickly, and I wanted to be untouchable, even from my own family. The only way was to start my own business. While I threw myself into entrepreneurship and started seeing some success, almost forgetting that Ryan was still technically my boyfriend, he suddenly proposed to me. It was graduation season, the season for breakups. At the time, Ryan never explicitly told me we were breaking up, but he did leave for the UK without saying a word. As for his entangled love and hate with Willa, I didn't care, and I didn't know what happened between them after that. I only knew he returned to China carrying a deep sadness. I assumed things between us were completely over. But then, unexpectedly, he circled back. "Emily," he said, "even though deep down I still feel torn about Willa, even though I don't love you, marry me. I want to make Willa understand that, as long as I choose to, even a woman she once treated like dirt can become a high society wife." If you ask me whether I was willing to be a stand-in, I wouldn't know how to answer. It was a strange, complex feeling, not quite resentment, but not full acceptance either. By then, I was already excellent in many ways with plenty of men pursuing me, but I was clear-eyed about my reality. Compared to the Chi family, I was still just moss on the ground beneath a towering tree. I needed that tree to shelter me. And so, I married him. I married with pomp and flair. Everyone said I had landed a golden husband, that I'd married into wealth and climbed the social ladder. Only I knew that, to me, Ryan was always just my boss. His parents, my so-called in-laws, were also my bosses. In this marriage, dressed in the mask of love, I did everything I could to be the perfect daughter-in-law and wife. Only by playing the role well could I gain more resources and grow my own business empire. Beneath the surface of happiness, I was always waiting for the moment of divorce. Especially after Willa returned to China, I noticed right away how they were tangled up again. First, he stopped coming home at night. Then came arguments with his family. When he wanted a divorce, I wasn't the first person he told. He went to his parents first. Isn't that funny? In his eyes, I never truly mattered. I was never worth his emotional effort. But just because I was willing to divorce didn't mean I'd give up my rights quietly. I wasn't Ryan and Willa's doormat, used and thrown away at will. The only thing that sparked a trace of guilt in Ryan was the fact that I was pregnant and suffering from severe morning sickness, day and night. But then he had his car accident. That gave him the perfect excuse to bring up divorce, blaming it on memory loss. That way, he could free himself without carrying the burden of guilt, as if that would cleanse him of any responsibility. Now that the final shoe has dropped, I can finally sleep peacefully. True to his word, Ryan handed me the divorce papers within 3 days. My hands trembled as I took them, tears brimming in my eyes. "Ryan," I said bitterly, 6 years. Even a stone would have warmed up by now. Are you telling me you never loved me? In your eyes, were the 6 years I gave you just a joke? Even this child I'm carrying, is that just my own fantasy? I went from letting a few pearly tears fall to squatting on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably, like the saddest, most abandoned girl in the world. My grief was partly an act, but the tears were real. Even if I married him for security and money, even if every night of intimacy was just part of the performance, it was still 6 years of entanglement. Ryan reached out a hand, as if to brush my messy hair, but stopped halfway. "Emily, you've always been the strongest woman I know. Please don't cry like this. I'm sorry, you really are incredible. You're the best wife and daughter-in-law anyone could ask for. But I've always loved Willa more. You know that. You stayed with me for 6 years, but I waited for her for 6 years too." I couldn't stand to hear him say it, even though deep down, I had always known it was true. I wept and wept, still refusing to show my disgust outwardly. He sighed and took back the divorce papers. Half a day later, his lawyer delivered a new version to me. The lawyer looked at me with a half smile and said, "Miss Shen, I must say you're impressive. Using the Chi family's connections, you opened a beauty clinic in your name and turned it into a wildly profitable business. And now you've even managed to walk away with multiple properties and over 100 million in liquid assets. I respect that." I wiped away my tears and replied with a sigh. If I had a choice, I'd rather grow old with someone. The lawyer shook his head with a grin. No matter how smart a man is, he's still no match for a woman's tears. The fact that Mr. Chi caved this easily proves you still mean something to him. Otherwise, no amount of crying would have worked. He doubled your compensation in just half a day." I didn't protest. I simply let the tears fall as I signed my name. My eyes are precious. Why would I waste tears on anyone or anything unless it brought me something in return? From beginning to end, I never once voiced a complaint about the Chi family or about Ryan. Even toward Willa, who stole my marriage and my man, I remained restrained and dignified. I ended things gracefully and walked away calmly. From this point on, I would love only myself and my daughter, who was about to be born. Even in the final weeks of pregnancy, I stayed immersed in work. Only my career gave me true security. Over the past 2 years, I'd expanded my beauty clinic business to 3 locations across the country. The number might be small, but each was positioned as a luxury brand, catering only to wealthy women and A or B-list celebrities. The income was substantial. Because I came from poverty, I feared it more than anyone else. I wanted to give both myself and my daughter the best material life possible. Every time we celebrated a grand opening or acquired a new asset, my daughter would kick cheerfully from inside me, as if dancing with me in celebration. I looked forward to meeting her more than anything in the world. Finally, on a crisp autumn Saturday morning, she arrived. Her cries were loud and clear. She was here to make her mark on this world. I named her Marnie. I chose the name Marnie because I had been forced to grow up wild in hardship, and I hoped she could grow up bold and carefree in wealth and security. I didn't ask for romantic love. I didn't ask for affection from my parents or siblings, but the one thing I truly yearned for was genuine emotion. And now in this world, I finally had someone I would love wholeheartedly. I held Marnie in my arms as Mrs. Chan, my former mother-in-law, sat beside me with a warm smile. She gently took Marnie's tiny hand and said softly, "Emily, you've worked so hard. You've done something great for our family." I smiled modestly and replied, "I wouldn't dare take credit." But Mrs. Chian sighed, her face tightening with worry. When Ryan got played for a fool by Willa back then, he was completely broken, on the verge of falling apart. You were the one who stayed by his side and slowly healed him with your gentleness, guiding him back on track. We finally started to hope that he could take over part of the company, but the moment Willa came back, he turned into a lovesick fool again, partying with her every night, throwing his responsibilities aside. These days, we're lucky if he even spends a few days in the country. She paused, her voice tinged with frustration. "Your father-in-law recently got seriously ill. I told Ryan and Willa to come back immediately. But Ryan, he'd rather stay in France and celebrate Willa's birthday than come home to care for his own father. What kind of son is that? Back then, I told you to endure it a little longer. Try to keep him around, delay the divorce. But you were too young, you couldn't hold on. I feel for you. I didn't want you to suffer out there all alone. But Emily, I want you to know that your father-in-law and I will never allow that woman Willa to enter our family. No matter how well matched our families may be, her reputation is in tatters. We can't afford the embarrassment." As I listened to her complain and lament, I stayed silent. These were the Chi family's internal affairs. I was now an outsider. It wasn't my place to speak. But suddenly Mrs. Chian grabbed my hand. "Emily, come back home. This family needs you. Marnie needs to come home." But the Chi family was never my home. They never truly accepted me, no matter what they claimed. I remembered when I first started dating Ryan, his parents were adamantly against me. I understood. What wealthy family would want their son to fall for a poor Cinderella? I never expected their approval. Later, after Ryan nearly destroyed himself over Willa, they reluctantly accepted me. But the contempt in their eyes, the sarcasm in their tone, I remembered it all clearly, especially that first New Year I spent at their house. The entire Chi family gathered, laughing and chatting away, completely ignoring me. Some went so far as to treat me like a servant, barking orders and deliberately trying to humiliate me. Ryan never defended me. When his parents froze me out on purpose, he just looked the other way. When even he didn't see me, who else could I count on? Fortunately, I had long prepared myself mentally for everything. I held my breath, kept a composed smile, and faced it all calmly, refusing to let anyone intimidate or push me around. Time and again, I was excluded, and time and again, I cleaned up the messes Ryan left behind. Eventually, They got used to my presence and reluctantly accepted my role as the Chi family's daughter-in-law. I could always smile through their tests and challenges, but I would never let myself be trampled on. I was no longer the clown I once was. So why would I return to the Chi household and humiliate myself all over again? Marnie's arrival slowed down my pace of life. Money was important, but being with my child mattered just as much. I carved out more time to be with her, to watch her grow. I loved my daughter deeply. And to my surprise, my former in-laws adored her too. At first, Mrs. Chian wanted to throw a lavish one-month celebration for Marnie. But I declined, saying she was too young to be exposed to so many unfamiliar people. Eventually, when Marnie reached her 100th day, we held a proper celebration. I didn't invite my biological parents or my brother. We had long been estranged. Instead, I only invited close friends and trusted business partners. The Chi family, on the other hand, treated the event with great formality. Relatives and friends from the entire extended family came. My former in-laws beamed with joy, publicly gifting Marnie an entire building and a yacht named after her. Their generosity was on full display. I didn't refuse the gifts. Marnie may be my daughter, but she was also the Chi family's first grandchild. These were things rightfully hers. People quickly adapted to the situation, fawning over Marnie, this little girl who didn't even understand what was happening. We hadn't invited Ryan or Willa to the celebration, but they still showed up late, walking in hand. Willa wore a pristine white suit and smiled as she presented a set of silver jewelry. "She's still so little," she said. "Real gold and jade might be too much for her. This suits her better." Without even glancing at the box, Mrs. Chian gestured for someone to take it, then had it tossed straight into the trash. Smiling down at Marnie, she said sweetly, "Our little Marnie is the Chi family's only child. She can't be touched by such lowly things." Her words, veiled as they were, made it perfectly clear who she meant by lowly. Willa's face turned pale with fury, but she had no choice but to swallow her anger. Quietly, she reached behind her and pinched Ryan's arm hard. Mrs. Chian turned to her son with a laugh. "Ryan, are you so overjoyed you've gone dumb? Why are you just standing there? Come hold your daughter." Ryan looked at the soft, rosy baby, clearly unsure what to do, but his expression softened, and something close to tenderness even flickered across his face. A rare sight. Holding out his hands, he smiled and asked me, "She's so little. Is it okay for me to hold her? I don't want to hurt her." I smiled and nodded. "She's over 3 months now. It's fine. Just don't hold her upright for too long. Keep her horizontal. It's better for her spine. Look, she's smiling at you. She really likes her daddy." Ryan lit up. "She has such a pretty smile. She looks just like I did when I was little. Even the way she blows bubbles is adorable." Mrs. Chian chimed in. "But Marnie's much better behaved than you were. You used to scream your lungs out every day, drove a whole team of nannies into nervous breakdowns. But little Marnie, she's so quiet, with those big shiny eyes and that sweet smile. You can tell she's going to have a blessed life." We laughed and chatted. To an outsider, we must have looked like the picture-perfect happy family. But in Willa's eyes, this scene must have felt like a knife to the heart. She suddenly forgot all about appearances and stormed over, grabbing Ryan and pulling him behind her as if to declare he was hers. I didn't hesitate. As soon as she rushed toward us, I picked Marnie up immediately. I would never let anyone endanger my child. Mrs. Chian's expression turned cold as she stared Willa down. "This celebration is for our family only. What are you doing here?" Willa, used to getting her way, jabbed her finger toward Mrs. Chian's face and snapped, "I'm your son's childhood sweetheart. We've been in love for over a decade. Why shouldn't I be here? You used to love me. You said I was the only one worthy of marrying into the Chi family. You even said once I came in, I'd be like your own daughter. And now, just a few years later, this is how you treat me." "We were truly in love," Willa shouted. "And you just had to tear us apart. What do you think, this is still the Qing dynasty?" Mrs. Chian trembled with fury. She hadn't expected Willa to lose all sense of decency and shout like that in public. With a slap that echoed through the room, she struck Ryan across the face. "Look at the kind of woman you've gotten involved with. She's not even through the front door and already dares to point at me and curse. What will she do once she's actually in the family? Try to bury us all alive?" Then she turned her sharp gaze on Willa. Yes, I said those things once, but have you forgotten what you did? You slept around overseas, disgracing yourself, and now you can't even have children. Is that how the Joe family raises their daughters? Willa refused to back down. With a smug smile, she said, It's true, I can't have children, but your son got a vasectomy for me. We're a perfect match. As soon as the words left her mouth, the room fell silent. Everyone was stunned. Mr. Chian, already in poor health, collapsed on the spot. Mrs. Chian clutched her chest, barely staying conscious. My heart felt like it had been hit by an earthquake. Ryan and Willa couldn't have children. Heaven had truly shown favor to me and my daughter. In high society, even when people fall out, they keep it subtle. It's rare for disputes to explode in public, but the mess between the Chi and Joe families had become a full-blown spectacle, louder and more chaotic than any street fight in a slum. Still, who could blame them? The revelation that Willa had caused Ryan to become infertile was too much. The Chi family's outrage was understandable, and honestly, I found it all rather ridiculous. Sure, Willa bore some responsibility, but Ryan wasn't a child, he wasn't some fool. Getting a vasectomy for love had been his own choice. In the world of romantic relationships, this was the ultimate bombshell. From Willa's perspective, she'd simply found someone dangerously obsessed with her. Women laughed at her behind her back, but deep down, many of them were envious. After all, who wouldn't want a man so devoted he'd risk everything for you? But me? I didn't envy her at all. My daughter and I were the real winners here. Since learning Ryan couldn't have children, Mr. and Mrs. Chian had treated me and Marnie with overwhelming affection. Before the divorce, they had tried to stop Ryan and even advised me to endure it a little longer. But that had been mere formality. No matter how far I'd come, in their eyes, I was still a girl from a poor background, an ambitious social climber. Not someone worth standing against their own son for, especially in the early days of our marriage, when my family showed up at their home once, causing a public scene over a bit of money, crying, rolling on the ground, making a mess of everything. It had been humiliating. But I dealt with it harshly. Behind closed doors, I beat my brother so badly he was left permanently disabled. I warned them that if they ever dared show up again, they wouldn't live to see the next sunrise. After that, I promised them 100,000 yuan a year if they behaved. That was the only reason they finally shut up. So, compared to my disgraceful, greedy family, it was no surprise the Chians had preferred the equally wealthy Zhou family. But now, with Willa's outrageous behavior for contrast, I had become the perfect daughter-in-law in their eyes. They started visiting often, at first, under the pretense of trying to talk me into reconciliation. But honestly, I didn't mind. Each visit meant more time they could spend bonding with Marnie, which wasn't a bad thing. What I didn't expect was that, just 6 months later, Ryan would come to my door himself. He looked a little worn, a little calmer than before. The madness from his love-obsessed days was gone, replaced by a sort of heavy, confused stillness. I greeted him politely, smiling warmly, unchanged on the surface. If you've come to see Marnie, I said, I can take her to the old house sometime. No need for you to come all the way here. Ryan stared at me, saying nothing for a long time. Then finally he spoke. Emily, let's get back together. Let's try again. Marnie needs a complete family. Let's love her together. His voice was hesitant at first, but the second sentence came with firmer conviction, as if he genuinely meant it. I looked down and smiled. We got married because of Willa. We divorced because of her. And now you want to get back together. Has she done something else? Ryan, I said, gently but clearly, we've known each other since high school. Maybe you never saw me as a real friend, but I always appreciated you. That's why I willingly gave 6 years of my life, for you, for your family. Please, out of respect for what I gave, let me go now. I won't cling to you, I won't fall apart or scream and cry. But I do have a heart. I know how to love, and I know how to hurt. Please, I said calmly, don't waste any more of my time. I'm not someone you can keep around like some useless object. And for heaven's sake, don't use the excuse of being a mother. I looked him in the eyes. Ask yourself, have you ever been a good father? You were the one who said you wanted a child, but ever since Willa came back, have you thought about your daughter even once? He murmured that he'd failed me, and that maybe I brought this upon myself. That after all, I had my own motives when I followed him from the beginning. But Marnie, she was the daughter he once claimed he wanted so badly. And yet, for Willa, he abandoned her completely. He wasn't worthy of being a father. Still, I kept smiling, but my tears wouldn't stop. They welled up, spilled over, one by one, trailing down my cheeks, splashing onto the dark stone floor, leaving behind shadowy stains. Ryan fled in disgrace. I watched his retreating figure from the window, the corners of my mouth curling into a mocking smile. To me now, his value was negligible. He wasn't worth sharing a bed with again. He only came back because his relationship with Willa had collapsed and she, in a fit of anger, had left again. He just wanted me to patch up his wounds. When I thought about it, it all made sense. Willa, no matter her flaws, was still the only daughter of the powerful Zhou family. She never needed to please in-laws or cater to men. She came back only because she'd grown bored of the white men overseas, because they couldn't give her the romantic intensity she craved. Only Ryan could. But that didn't mean she'd change. She would never compromise, never become a traditional wife serving in-laws and raising children. She had zero patience for the mundane business affairs of the Chi family. Proud as she would never bend for anyone. Her explosive fight with the Chi family wasn't because she loved Ryan so much. It was simply because the man she thought was hers didn't fall into her hands as expected. It was a blow to her pride. Now that she realized going head-to-head with the Chi family would get her nowhere, it made sense that she left. Maybe they loved each other, but they were clearly never right for each other. Ryan might be a scumbag, but at least he had a sense of shame. After I turned him down, he didn't bother me again. But Mr. and Mrs. Qian weren't so easy to dismiss. With Willa gone, they were desperate to bring Marnie back under their roof, and me along with her, as a package deal. Mrs. Qian asked to speak with me seriously. She laid out the pros and cons of the custody arrangement and asked me to decide, but I didn't need the Chi family's power anymore, so I simply smiled and declined. "Mom," I said kindly, "if you truly want custody of Marnie, I won't object. She carries the Chi name. She's your and Dad's granddaughter." But think about it. Ryan lost his mind over Willa once. What's to say he won't do it again for some other woman? And when that happens, when chaos comes again, how do you think Marnie will see her father? Also, you know what my family is like. If I were to remarry into the Chi family, they'd become arrogant and unrestrained again. Would you really want to see them reveling in their own pettiness and greed? I gently persuaded her to consider the benefits of keeping things as they were, and the risks of forcing a reunion. Mrs. Qian hesitated. After separation, people always tend to romanticize the past, forgetting the daily friction that once existed. When we lived together, there were conflicts and clashes constantly. Maybe it was better to stay like this now, neither close nor distant, just like extended relatives. Eventually, the Chi family stopped talking about remarriage or changing custody. It wasn't because they hadn't considered sidelining me and taking Marnie by force, but I was no longer someone they could push around. And it wasn't just because Ryan and Willa's scandal had put public opinion firmly on my side. It was because of who I had become, the network of elite alumni, socialites, and women of influence I had built through my business. If the Chi family dared to fight me openly now, they'd find that I was no longer the weak girl they once trampled. I had finally become the woman I once dreamed of being. The next time I saw Willa Zhou was 2 years later, at Paris Fashion Week. She was still dressed impeccably. But even across the runway, through the crowd and shifting lights, I could see the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, the wariness in her expression. To women who worship beauty, letting foundation crease into wrinkles is a cardinal sin. But there she was, her makeup worse than some of the models walking the catwalk. Her eyes locked onto mine. In them, I saw a flicker of hatred. I gave her a gentle smile, just like I used to, years ago. After the show, I chatted and laughed with a few top fashion editors as we walked out of the venue. A few celebrities followed behind us, chiming in with charming, flattering banter. But Willa stepped forward and blocked my way. "Emily," she said, "can we talk?" I smiled and nodded to my friends, then followed her into a cafe by the street. She remained quiet for a while, clearly expecting me to speak first. But when I didn't, she finally lost patience and said, "So, you're feeling pretty pleased with yourself now, huh? I bought you for 10,000 yuan back then, and now look at you, pretending to be some high society lady." My smile didn't waver. "Willa, thank you for that 10,000 yuan. Truly, as for where I am today, I earned it. No one has the right to be jealous." Her eyes flashed with venom. "You earned it? You climbed the ladder by sleeping with someone else's man, stealing him behind a friend's back. You're nothing but a shameless social climber." I folded my hands on the table, my tone colder now. "I really don't understand your hostility toward me. Ryan was the one you pushed onto me. It was you who took him back while we were still married. You spent your nights with my husband while I was 8 months pregnant. Everything that happened, I was the one wronged. Yet I never once badmouthed you." I met her gaze directly. "Willa, is it that you've had your fun with men, or that men have had their fun with you? Either way, you can't handle the outcome anymore, can you? No matter what I was in the past, I've risen on my own now. And you've already begun your decline. Your selfishness and recklessness made your parents a laughingstock in our circles. You've lost direction even in business, and now you blame me instead of reflecting on yourself. Don't you think that's a bit ridiculous?" I paused, then said, "Back in high school, why do you think I agreed to play the obedient little dog? Because I needed money, and I needed protection. Our classmates, born with money and privilege, didn't just mock me, they bullied me. And you, Willa, led the charge. You loved seeing me grovel, watching me humiliated, crawling for your approval. I was obedient enough not to make it fun anymore. That's why I got to stick around as your lapdog. Imagine that. Being your lapdog was my best-case scenario. If not for that, I might not have survived those 3 years. I never thought about revenge. I always knew the rules of the world weren't written for people like me. All I could do was swim against the current, get stronger, give up my dignity, my time, my freedom, just to climb out. And I did. I earned it, but you, Willa, couldn't even stand still. In this circle, stability is everything. Even a mediocre heir is better than chaos. You should be grateful your parents built a strong enough foundation, otherwise, you wouldn't even be qualified to sit across from me at this table. But I don't think that'll last. The day this circle casts you out, it's not far off." When Ryan and I ran into each other at the airport after returning from Paris, the first thing he said was, "Willa gave you a hard time again. Didn't she? She's always been like that. You don't have to put up with her anymore." It was funny, really. Back then, he was Willa's most loyal believer. Even if she had wanted to kill someone, he would have handed her the knife and taken the blame for her. Just like in high school, whenever she was upset, she'd work me to exhaustion like I was her servant. And he'd just smile, pull her into his lap, and praise her. "Good job, so pure, so sweet." The memory flickered by like sunlight skimming over old wounds. I smiled brightly. "No, nothing like that. We're just old acquaintances catching up. Though, she doesn't seem to be doing too well. And she still loves you, Ryan. Maybe you should go back to Paris and find her. I hope you two work things out, stay together forever, tormenting each other for life." Ryan stared at me for a moment, dazed. He muttered, "Emily, you've changed. You're nothing like the girl you used to be. When you smile now, it's like there's a halo around you. You're radiant." It was the first compliment he'd ever given me, and it came after we divorced. How ironic. I lowered my gaze and said nothing. I was too tired to entertain him. Seeing that I wasn't going to reply, Ryan fell silent too. But halfway through the drive, he suddenly spoke again. "Emily, I've already let go of Willa. Her love, it's like poison. I'm afraid of it now. I don't want to go near her again. Can we just live a normal life, the two of us, from now on?" I knew Willa had been calling him constantly these past few weeks. He hadn't picked up once. Maybe he really did want to cut her off completely. And that, Ryan, was one of the reasons Willa hated me so much. In her mind, I was the one who stole you away from her. I gave a calm smile. "Ryan, when you had your car accident, you and Willa weren't actually fighting in the car, were you? You say now that her love is poison. But wasn't it that very intensity, that suffocating passion of hers, that you once loved the most?" I know the truth. Back then, the two of you were driving and talking about how to pressure me into divorcing you. You got so wrapped up in the conversation that Willa leaned over and laid her head on your shoulder. You loved each other recklessly, passionately, so fiercely that even a near-death crash couldn't stir the smallest bit of guilt in either of you. What Willa did was never my concern, but you, Ryan, you were my husband, you were Marnie's father, and honestly, you disgust me. But in a way, I'm thankful for that disgust. It made it easy to step over you as I climbed, with no guilt, no hesitation. When we strip it down to nothing but gain and utility, that's the best kind of relationship you and I can have. I have my own business now. I manage the portion of the Chi family assets that rightfully belong to Marnie. Every day of my life is filled with joy you couldn't even imagine. Looking at my little girl, sweet but with a spark of mischief, I often think back to my childhood. I still remember the look on my parents' faces when they sat at the dinner table, casually discussing how much they could sell me for in marriage. Like I was a soulless object, sitting right there next to them. It took everything I had to break away from them. But even after I escaped, I could never shake the fear and unease that lived deep inside me. That's why I craved money, craved power, craved everything that could make me strong. And now, after having my daughter, I finally understand. Only love can heal the wounds left by a lack of love. Every time she gives me one of her sweet little smiles, it soothes the broken places in me better than anything else ever could. I've walked through fields of thorns to earn the heavy, beautiful crown I now wear. And I hope that my daughter and every girl out there can hold her head high and wear a crown of her own. Not like me. Not by lowering her head into the dirt just to earn it.